Dave, what's
Just
going on?
doing my first podcast. What are
Nice.
you doing? What are you up to?
Just hanging out. Just hanging out.
Hanging out in Portland, Oregon,
Oh yeah, man. And you're out there in Colorado.
Denver, Colorado. Yes, sir.
And so you said you take your motorcycle into work? Is that right?
I yes, I do. As long as it's warmer than 36 degrees, that's like the cutoff. 37 degrees is like it's manageable.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, I have heated grips, which is very luxurious.
Oh, okay.
Um, and plus in Colorado anyway, it always heats up to about at least 45, 50 degrees in the winter
Mm-hmm.
because we're a mile closer to the sun, and it's just super dry. There's no like humidity,
So that
which
mile
is
closer to the sun actually does affect things then.
yeah, it definitely does. It's even when it's 35 degrees outside, if the sun's out, it's just way warmer.
Mm.
Um, I think there's like 20% less oxygen or something out here, but
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah, that's right. Your lungs have got to be really good to get out there. Or I mean, really good when you come and you go elsewhere.
you can actually drink a lot more alcohol. Not that that matters, but that's a fun fact. If you come down to sea level, your blood alcohol level is totally different because
Oh,
you
nice.
have, I
So you're
could
saying
I
you
could
can't drink a ton out there, but you can drink a ton whenever you travel.
right,
Mm.
yeah. So I try to always go to weddings at sea level. Um,
You're like,
but,
is it anywhere near the ocean?
right. So but yeah, that's like I think I read somewhere that at higher elevation, your body produces more red blood cells.
Mm.
The more red blood cells transport more oxygen because that's needed because you have 20% less oxygen. But that can actually come in handy
Mm.
for your blood alcohol level. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a wilderness first responder. I didn't
Nice.
really ask. We didn't get too deep into that one, but watch your intake. Don't drink too many cocktails when you first get to Denver.
Right,
That'd be
because they're
that'd,
just stronger.
that'd be my number one tip.
Number
Yep.
one Colorado tip.
Yeah. Take it easy on the booze and drink a lot of water. Just drink a lot of water. And if you think you're gonna go from sea level to like Vail or Breckenridge
Mm.
and just knock out a bunch of skiing, don't be surprised if you get a migraine headache and get some mild altitude sickness.
Nice.
It's a real deal.
Nice.
Um, but the good news is you can just come down
Wait,
and
so
you'll be
did
fine.
you get any altitude sickness when you moved there?
I didn't. Actually, a little bit. Yeah, I think it took about 6 months.
Mm.
About 6 months to fully adjust, not really notice the altitude as much. But when I first moved here, I did a lot of hiking and
Mm.
a lot of things that you don't have access to that you do here. You
Mm.
sort of jump all over. So yeah, we hiked a couple 14ers, and I just remember waking up in the mornings and just being out of breath and having an awesome headache. Um,
So
but
what's
that's
a 14er? You mean 14 miles of hiking?
14,000 foot
14,000 feet.
mountains.
Okay.
Yeah, so I believe there's 50 something 14,000 foot peaks in Colorado that you can summit.
Mm.
I have a poster somewhere that I need to put in a frame, but
And so 14 is normal or mini. What's the highest?
that's about it. That's the highest. Like
Oh, okay.
if you summit a 14er, that's like a all day event. You
Mm.
usually go up the night before and you spend the night or camp out. Then you get up before the sun rises and you launch out and
Mm.
you start hiking. Yeah, and I would say depending on what kind of shape you're in, depending on which 14er it is,
Mm.
you can do it I mean anywhere from 5 to 8 hours,
Mm.
maybe 6 to 8 hours.
Mm.
I'm kind of an all dayer,
Nice.
but yeah,
Well, we
there's
recently did uh, Mount St. Helens. That was a cool experience. And yeah,
Mount St. Hel.
definitely getting up there early was a good way to do it.
That's a good hike. That was the first time I almost got lost in a blizzard. I was summiting St. Helens
Mm.
back in like 2009,
Mm-hmm.
and I had like shorts on and I was severely underdressed. It was spring, it was like June, I think.
Mm.
or maybe it was May or June, end of May,
Hmm.
and they only allow a certain amount of passes, I think.
Hmm. Right.
Anyway, I was summoning it with a friend, and halfway up, a blizzard set in. Visibility went to zero. It was like 50-mile-an-hour winds. Um, you couldn't see like more than 5 feet in front of you.
Hmm.
We finally decided to turn around. At this point, my like hands stopped working, and I was like having like mild hypothermia. And we got off trail,
Hmm.
and we were coming down this boulder field, and I remember stopping for a second and thinking like, what's the worst that could happen here? I was like, well, the worst that could happen here is we keep going down and we'll probably hit tree line, even if
Right.
we're off trail,
Right.
And then from there, I would assume we're going to run into a logging road that will wrap around, put us to the campsite. So when I really broke it down, I didn't feel like my life was in danger. But
Oh
for a
my
minute,
gosh.
I was a little concerned. And then I was like, I think I'm fine.
Mm.
I might be wearing like a rain jacket and shorts, but just keep going down and make
Mm.
sure visibility doesn't get any worse, and we should be fine. And sure enough, it was cool.
It worked out.
But yeah,
So you're saying you weren't stuck, but you got lost.
I got lost, and I was with a friend of mine, and I was trying to not act like we were in danger,
Hmm.
and I think we were a little bit. At least
Well,
it makes us.
somebody died out here. I mean, lots of people died in St. Helens, but somebody died. What was it? They were on their in their car. You remember this story? And
I
they
know
they walked and walked in the forest and ended up dying.
that's
It was crazy because I guess they said if he had just continued in any one direction, he would have been just fine. But
right.
apparently, he went in several directions. Yeah, he was like a tech guy. I think his family was in the car or something. I'm surprised you don't remember this. It was
Was
kind of
he
a
like?
big story.
Wasn't he like going for help or something?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
yeah. Um. Anyway,
Mm,
yeah, I we made it out.
mm,
And then we went to Waffle House or something. I don't remember
mm,
exactly, but I remember that was the first time in my life where I was legitimately concerned.
mm.
I was thinking this could be bad.
Yeah. You say Waffle House? Is that a Colorado thing?
That's an Oklahoma thing,
Oh wait, we're in St. Helens. No. How'd you
right?
get to
But
Oklahoma?
that's a good point. That's a great segue. I'm from Oklahoma,
Oh,
and
okay.
I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma, actually, to be more specific. I grew up there.
Okay.
And there's these white like chain 24-hour breakfast spots
Mm-hmm.
called Waffle House.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Is it a full restaurant or a kiosk?
it's a full restaurant.
Mm.
You go in there, you can sit down. It can be 3 in the morning. I mean, they like will serve anybody, and I mean anybody. And you can get waffles, hash browns, eggs, just kind of like a greasy spoon
Right.
diner that's open 24 hours a day.
Right.
um, and usually one of the neon letters is out on the sign, and
You're like,
so
you have
we
to
just
have a neon letter out.
yeah, so we would just call it Awful House. That was the joke.
Nice.
um, but yeah, anyway, I think we went to something similar to that after this traumatic St. Helens experience. We
Mm.
never summited, by the way.
Mm.
um, but yeah, anyway, that's my harrowing Pacific Northwest outdoor.
So how was it growing up in Oklahoma?
Despite what people think about Oklahoma, I think it's actually a pretty good place to grow up.
Mm.
Tulsa specifically is a really safe city.
Mm.
It has great schools, super nice people, really big like high school like football scene. They have a real burgeoning downtown with like a lot of music history.
Mm.
And surprisingly close to a lot of outdoor spaces. And hunting is big, hiking is big there.
Mm.
You can get to Northwest Arkansas, which is beautiful,
Mm.
and the cost of living is super cheap. So
Mm.
actually, currently right now, the city has a
A
grant
10K. Yeah.
available
I saw
Yeah, a
that
little
too.
little plug for the city of Tulsa. They'll pay you 10 grand to move to Tulsa if you
Hmm.
are a remote employee, like especially in tech.
Hmm.
Um, I think there's some restrictions around that, but they'll pay you to live out there and to move out there, which is pretty cool that they're doing that. They're trying to get people to come out and actually settle and be a part of the community,
Hmm.
which is really neat. Fun to go back there on the holidays after living in New York and Portland and Colorado
Hmm.
and traveling a lot to Los Angeles and um, everywhere. It's,
Yeah,
inter-
you're
it's
with the supply there out of Colorado, staffing the world, and you even went international for some of that work, didn't you?
for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we co-run a it's like a digital talent recruiting
Mm-hmm.
business. So we essentially place designers and developers, um, and there's some peripheral skill sets that we place around just those roles. We place producers,
Mm-hmm.
creative producers, content producers, digital producers. But anybody in the creative or tech space is kind of our sweet spot. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we're lucky that we can kind of work from wherever. We actually don't do much work out in Colorado. We just live here. Most of the work we do is in New York, San Francisco, and LA.
Would you
So
say what's it like the kind of face to face versus in person for the kind of work you do? Do you say is it like face to face initially and then uh, phone
we
calls
actually
and email after that?
it's usually reverse since we don't live
Mm-hmm.
in those cities. We make a lot of our connections just online
Mm-hmm.
first. Whether that's um, a big part of our day is just sort of scraping every portfolio site, every award site, every new little tiny design shop that's popping up, anybody that's making any kind of splash, um, junior designers, senior designers,
Mm-hmm.
and then sort of just it's just kind of like research. We just drill down and we just are monitoring 300
Mm-hmm.
different places, and my partner is particularly good at picking out new people and finding new people
Mm-hmm.
because of the new administration and some of those more restrictive immigration laws. We've been less help bringing over international talent, but we have a huge pool of international talent. So we
Mm-hmm.
make those connections first. We usually proactively reach out. It's more of a tone of we think you have really great work, and we saw this project that won this award.
Mm-hmm.
We just wanted to say what's up. This is what we do. It'd be cool to be in touch for some time down the road. Maybe we could work with you on a freelance project or something. And that tone is so much better than like a cold call
Right.
recruiter email that you might get on LinkedIn. That's with somebody that just doesn't know anything about you and has like almost like a Google Doc that they copy paste from and
And it's not
swap
short.
your name out. Right.
It's
It's not
it's
short.
usually like this long, and it says about 1,000 different things.
Right.
Yeah, I've
So
definitely seen my share of those.
we have a collection of those. We have our friends send us all the awful recruiter emails they've ever seen, and we kind of do the opposite of that.
Right.
So
So if
we
you're, oh,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, go.
I was just gonna say if you were to describe the supply in like one sentence, what would you describe it as?
We're your friends. I would just say that we're your friends. We're like extra eyes and ears.
Mm,
Most of the clients that we have and the candidates that we work with and the talent are pretty good friends of ours now.
mm,
Um, we make it a point to stay on top of what everybody's doing outside of work. We do meetups in different cities. We hold a lot of just kind of open bar, hangout, happy
mm.
hour sessions just to get everybody together and spend some time together face to face. And
It seems like a really innovative thing to do. So you're actually reaching out to people before you land in those cities and saying, "Hey, like, let's connect for a supply meetup."
yeah, 100%. And it's no agenda really. There is no agenda. There's no catch. It's
Mm,
just like, hey, we're doing our quick 48-hour New York City visit.
mm,
We're going to be in this neighborhood. doing
Mhm.
a lot of meetings after work, pop by, grab a few drinks,
Mhm.
meet some other people that we think you think would be interesting, fill us in on what's up with you, and then hey, we'll do it again next month.
Mhm.
So it's been kind of fun. Those have been just like a small kind of creative outlet for us. We have some different designers that we work with that
Mhm.
help us with like invitations and just like creative, funny ways to say like, hey, we're doing this impromptu like happy hour or drink hour.
Mhm.
Yeah, it seems to be effective. At
Mhm.
least it's a great way to get a bunch of people in one room, and it really feels like we actually live there instead of
Mhm.
just some random faces in Denver, Colorado, sending you emails that are riddled with spelling errors.
Right. And then, so how did you get involved with the supply? Uh, what's your story of getting into that line of business? And then where did the supply come in that?
That's a good question. I was actually a designer. I went to school for design.
Mhm.
I graduated. I had always wanted to move to New York City. I thought that was the polar opposite of Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Mhm.
And I always kind of wondered what that would be like to crazy. And in the back of my mind, I always was fascinated with advertising and
Mhm.
sort of the social and cultural impact that advertising has and the science behind it. I was
Mhm.
always a fan of Nike. I was always a fan of uh, Wyden Kennedy going to college. You just sort of heard stories about them. So anyway, I moved to New York immediately after I graduated, and I blew all my savings account in the matter of like I don't know. I think I had like $2,000 in the bank, and called my dad one night, told him I screwed up, told him I was out of money.
Mhm.
He lent me some money, and he said, "This is it. If you can't figure out how to make this work, you got to come back home." So I
Oh man.
stopped eating pizza and staying out till 4 in the morning.
Right.
And I started hitting the streets hard. I really, really just learned to be scrappy and
Mhm.
just I networked my face off. Essentially, I would email anybody I could, any email address I could get a hold of, whether that was for BBD or DDB or McCann or Gray or a lot of these pretty
Those are big agencies.
famous advertising agencies,
Mhm.
and I wouldn't ask for a job. I wouldn't ask if there was even a job opening. I would say, "Hey, I'm new to New York.
Mhm.
I I I'm reaching out because I know you did X, Y, and Z
Mhm.
TV spots, or I know your credentials are on this campaign.
Mhm.
Would you mind letting me buy you a coffee or beer one afternoon, and can you just tell me kind of how you got to where you're at?"
Mhm.
And people like to talk about themselves, so it wasn't too hard for somebody to agree to let you, first of all, let you buy them alcohol
Mhm.
or caffeine. It was usually alcohol, and they would tell you, you know, how they got to where they were. And
Mhm.
most people, I would argue, from New York are not from there. They
Mhm.
are from the Tulsa, Oklahomas of the world,
Mhm.
and they've carved out a niche for themselves in a city that um, they feel like they belong in, and everybody else is kind of has the same story. And they've really worked hard and have been scrappy to kind of get to where they're going, and they're proud of where they've gotten themselves,
Mhm.
and they're happy to share that with you. And then if you can approach that from like a humble perspective, you'd
Mhm.
be surprised what kind of handouts or help you
Mhm.
know they'll they'll offer you without asking for anything in return. And so that
Mhm.
I kind of picked up on that formula, and before I knew it, I was in every advertising agency,
Wow.
and I was getting freelance jobs, and
Oh, so
people
you
were
were having these conversations, and then they were saying, "What are you into?" And you're like, "I'm into design." And then they're like,
right.
"We might have some freelance work," and
Yeah, I
it
was
just
just
kind of
honest.
spun up like that.
Yeah, I was just honest. I
Mhm.
just said, "Hey, I'm new to New York. My degree is in advertising and graphic design,
Mhm.
and I just wanted to see how you got here." And then sure enough, they would ask like, "Hey, do you freelance?" And,
Hmm.
when you're fresh out of college, you say yes. You say
Right.
yes to just about everything. And they would say, "Well, we might have an opening in our studio,"
Hmm.
or "I have a friend that needs a junior level designer, a production designer. Can you come
Hmm.
in?" Or like, "Hey, how good are you at Photoshop?" "I'm
Hmm.
great. I'm the best Photoshop person there is." And before you know it, you start finding yourself in jobs that are paying a reasonable amount of money for
Hmm.
a kid right out of college. And even if you have to sit in a chair in a dark room with a
Hmm.
Adobe Illustrator manual in your lap, learning as you go,
Right.
you can kind of.
Well, you got the gig, so yeah.
Yeah, I got the gig, and I remember
Learning
my
as you
first.
go is I don't know. I feel like it's I want to say so underrated. I just feel like it doesn't get nearly as much credit as it should.
No, it doesn't. And most of the most of the smartest people and successful people I know have done exactly that. They just
Mm.
have taken advantage of that situation, and they've learned as they've moved along.
Well, it's fake it till you make it with cash.
It really
So,
is.
yeah.
You got to figure it out.
Yeah,
Can't
before
fake
the
it
you
and
got to
then not make
deliver
it.
it, you got to figure it out
Right.
for sure.
So anyway, I diverged. Long story short, bringing this back around,
Mm-hmm.
I was getting a lot of experience working as a designer at different advertising agencies in New York, and I came out to Portland,
Mm-hmm.
Oregon, and
What brought you out
I
there?
bunch of friends from college were out there, and they were like, "Hey, we know you
Mm-hmm.
like New York, but we think you'd like Portland better."
Mm-hmm.
And I was skeptical, and I came out to visit on like one of those pristine, blue sky, 78-degree summer days,
We have good
and
summers. Yes.
perfect summers. And I thought this place is magic. How come nobody knows about this?
Mm-hmm.
And I got a job out there just based on some friends
Mm-hmm.
and referrals. And that's how I ended up there. I think the question was though, how did I get into the supply though?
Yeah, well, I mean
And
that's how
I
you got
kind of
into
kind of
design,
diverged.
and then you
Right.
from design you kind of
Yeah,
made a sidestep.
from design and networking
Mm-hmm.
or learning how to network, I I took a step back one day and realized that I was getting all of my friends' jobs,
Mm-hmm.
and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it when hiring managers, the studio managers would ask me like, "Hey, do you know somebody that can do this?" I would say yes.
Right.
Um, and
Because you'd
then
already been good at making those intros and having those conversations anyway, so that
right,
makes sense.
yeah. So that's that was that was kind of history, and I made a move into sort of that recruiting space, and I just you just do what you know, like stick
Mm-hmm.
stick to what you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing that my one of my parents. This was like some parental advice, but they always said stick to what you know, and
Mm-hmm.
I knew creative and design, and I ended up being in recruiting, and then I ended up having some marquee clients like Wyden Kennedy,
Mm-hmm.
and then it just kind of built from there. And
Mm-hmm. And then you ended
I
up
took
actually taking a job at Wyden at one point
I
to
took a job
do
at Wyden
recruiting.
and was doing technical and
Mm-hmm.
digital like design recruiting for them. That's when I met my business partner who had started the supply
Mm-hmm.
a few years back, and I just had always had an itch to be my own boss and to do my own thing, and I suppose I always had an objection to rules and adhering to what other people wanted, and so
Mm-hmm.
I just always wanted to work for myself.
Right.
And he and
You
I
had that
became,
entrepreneurial bug, and
I guess
you
so.
had a good opportunity spring up.
I
I
had a
still
great
remember
effort.
having that conversation with you when you're like, "Hey," and how long have you known Shaw's at that point?
I think I'd known Shaw's for about 2 years, and I was really impressed with the business he'd built,
Mm-hmm.
and I was impressed with the work he'd done for us and the people he had sent me,
Mm-hmm.
since I was a client of his,
Mm,
and
okay.
he had
So
he had
you were
always.
working with him as a recruiter to bring people into Wyden. or to other places as well?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
I was. He was the only I think he was the only external like talent recruiting
Mm.
sort of headhunter we worked with,
Mm-hmm.
or at least I worked with,
Mm-hmm.
and
Well,
we would
yeah, I
always
remember
run
that.
into each other. Yeah.
I remember that conversation where you're saying, "Hey, I'm thinking of doing this thing, joining forces with Shaz, and moving to Colorado." And I was like, "No," but it
Yeah.
it was pretty cool. You did it. You made it, and now you're an entrepreneur.
I suppose so. Sometimes I don't like consider myself that, but it's worked out really well, and it's taken me a lot of great places, and it's put me in front of a lot of interesting people, and it's kind of given me a crash course in running your own business and
Mm-hmm.
self discipline and all those things. It's a very funny thing not having a boss and being responsible for your own success or failure.
Yeah, you can't
There's not
you
really
can't
anybody to
ever say
blame.
not my job.
Yeah, yeah, it's really on you. So here we are today, and
Mm.
we have awesome clients. We're super lucky. We work with. I don't want to make a disclaimer
Mm.
in the open that we work with all these brands, but we've partnered with um, like Google Creative Labs in the past.
Mm-hmm.
We've done some work with Etsy. We've essentially top tier brands,
Mm-hmm.
and I suppose a part of that is luck and us getting older because as we get older, a lot of friends in our industry that have had
Right.
success have moved into really amazing positions, and they've been generous enough to reach out to us
Mm-hmm.
for help since we do this one specific thing.
That
So
actually
yeah,
reminds me of one of like the best tips that I like to give people on LinkedIn. But I'll
what
say
is
that
it?
tip in just 1 second. I'm trying out advertising.
All right,
So,
let's do it.
yeah. I don't know if I told you about this app that I've been using, but basically, I've been lifting a lot recently, and it's been extremely cool because I just pop open this app. I uh, It uses artificial intelligence to look at what muscle groups are tired, what my goals are, how much time I've got, and what equipment I've got in my gym. It calibrates all that together and comes up with a custom workout. You just hit go, and it handles all the rest. And what's awesome is that I worked with them, and now Kirk Live is a sponsor. So you can actually go to just type in your browser kirk.live/fitbod, and it'll pop right up. And then you just use the promo code FITBOD and get 25% off your subscription there. So, pretty spectacular app. Highly recommend it.
That sounds interesting. Is it pretty accurate? Does
Oh,
it?
well, it's not about so much accuracy, but it's going to give you whatever's the right workout for you to do next. Um,
That sounds really handy. I'll have to try that with all my travel. That'd be amazing.
mm, yeah, well, I just like it because it was always difficult for me to log it, and it was difficult for me to know what to do. And this app just tackles both those in one fell swoop. You can turn off your brain and just click OK, 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 OK as you work through. Anyway, the top tip is similar to what you're talking about.
I'm gonna write this down.
Yeah, get recommendations from people um, whenever you
That's
can, because when you get a recommendation from someone, you never know where they're going to go. So, for example, on my LinkedIn, I've got I believe um, I can't recall like a VP at a top computer company, an owner at a extremely popular creative agency, and it's grown hugely. And so it's almost like an investment. It literally feels like an investment account to get a recommendation from someone, and then you just know that they're either going to succeed or not. But you can always show and hide those um, accordingly. But it can really put some weight uh, behind your title when you're saying this extremely successful person gave me this recommendation. So it's a part of it is saying, oh, that's the recommendation they were giving you back then, but a part of it is saying they did well in their career, and so they knew what they were talking about.
That's a really great tip, and one that someone such as myself should follow more. I don't think I have any recommendations on LinkedIn.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's and people aren't too shy about filling them out. Timing is a big part of that, right? Because you kind of want to do it at a transition point, because asking for a recommendation out of the blue is just a little odd. You whenever you ask for a recommendation, somebody's going to say, "Why? What's going on here? What are you thinking about?"
Right,
Because it could be indicative of a job change, or that you're not feeling happy, or I don't know.
right.
Because
Yeah, like
you're trying to boost your profile.
you don't want to reach out to a former relationship and ask them to recommend you on LinkedIn, like at 2 in the morning on a Saturday.
Well, I mean, reaching out to former people is not too bad, but yeah, timing is important. Um,
That's a good tip. I will work on my LinkedIn profile.
yes,
Uh,
capture recommendations. They're free and valuable. Um, you mentioned to me that you had something to say about where you might live if cost was not an issue.
oh, right. I think when everybody, I think you cross a threshold when you are, let's say, your early 30s.
Mm,
Let's say 33,
mm,
33 to 35. And if you have been inclined to, you know, sort of move around for your career and try out different cities, you've probably got a good taste of like what the East Coast is versus the
mm,
West Coast. Whether it's like Portland or San Francisco or New York or Los
mm,
Angeles, or Austin.
mm,
And all of those are significantly different places.
mm,
And all of a sudden you start to really consider what kind of life do I want to, build around myself and what's important to me and
mm,
what do I, what are goals? And you start thinking about real goals, not like, I want to get ripped. Not that that's not a great goal. Um, but you start thinking about like, do I want to have a house? Do I want to have
mm,
kids? Do I want to build my business? Do I
mm,
want to surround myself or my family with other like-minded individuals?
mm,
Do I want to be near the ocean? Do I want outdoors? Do I want art and culture?
mm,
And you sort of you narrow your cities down,
mm,
and I just think it's really interesting where people choose to live and why.
mm,
And there's always something that you have to sacrifice depending on where you want to live.
mm. So,
Uh,
if cost
yeah.
wasn't an issue, where would you like to live?
Uh, let's let's back up a little bit. First of all, I feel like I'm a pretty adaptable person.
Mm,
I like change. I like change. I am okay with a certain amount of risk.
mm,
Uh, I I feel like these things. Maybe people that know me better might tell me differently, but
mm,
um, some of the most exciting times in life, I think, are packing all your stuff up and going somewhere new, or being on an airplane. And if we could have a pause on aging, I think it would be amazing to live in all of those cities for
mm,
a two-year period.
mm,
But I would say that for the quality of living, access to art, culture, outdoor activities,
mm,
food, quality of life, it's really hard to beat Portland, where you live,
mm,
and just Oregon in general. I think that Boulder, Colorado, and specifically, it's off a lot of those boxes as well. It's just kind of like a smaller micro version
mm,
of that. It's almost like a smaller version of Bend,
mm.
Oregon. And I
Right.
know that's not for everybody
Mm,
at all. But if I, had my choice, based on the friends and people,
mm,
and life activities around me, I would probably live in Boulder or
mm,
Portland. If I had to choose a third spot, Northern California is beautiful, and as expensive as the Bay Area is, it offers a ton of opportunity
mm,
for networking, and jobs and access to outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's on currently like in a serious crisis with all the fires right now, but
Mm-hmm.
it's an amazing city. It's right
Mm-hmm.
on the coast. It's stunning. And if you have an opportunity to go there for a few years, I would I would recommend it. I
What city
also
specifically? Like, where would you? What would be ideal in Northern California?
anything in the Bay Area.
Mm,
I,
okay.
I, I think if you can make it happen and afford to have that San Francisco experience,
Mm-hmm.
you probably should, because
Mm-hmm.
it's so drastically different than Los Angeles
Hmm.
or New York or Seattle. It's so
Interesting.
different.
They're in the news all the time for about 100 different things, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I still
So
remember that growing up in Portland. Portland's in the news for quite a few things too. I still
yeah,
remember being in elementary school and they would say, uh, "Here's the way the rest of the country does this thing, and here's just how Portland does it. Here's the way the rest of the country does that thing. Here's how Portland does it." And I
right.
always remember being like, "Oh, we're a special case for some reason," which I didn't quite
Yeah.
understand. But
Portland is a special case, but you
mm,
know what? So is Austin. Like
mm,
Austin and Portland are very similar in many ways. Everybody
yeah,
calls them sister cities
yeah,
for a reason.
yeah,
And Austin, Texas, is an amazing city.
yeah.
Um,
Okay, so that would be number four.
yeah, if I had to rank them, it would be probably Portland, Boulder, San Francisco, Austin.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, nice.
yeah.
Um, I'd be remiss if I did not ask you what kind of changing subjects a little bit, but uh, since you are a recruiter, since you do work with people, getting them jobs, what are your top tips for candidates whenever they're going to go into a role? Like assuming they got past the resume stage, there's enough interest to have a conversation, whether that be in person or remote. What are your top tips for that candidate?
Are we talking about walking into like stage one conversations? Is
Sure.
that kind of what we're?
Yeah. Just basically, I'm just trying to get um, those, you know,
Well,
Dave's
first,
top tips for
sure,
because
and we
it's one of those things where experience, and you've interacted with all these people, you've seen the moment when the company is super interested and then the company's not interested, and it's kind of like, whoa, what happened there? So, kind of that those top tips about what to avoid for a company, backing off.
sure. Sometimes I hold back on giving candidates advice on interviewing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the times, the candidates that we work with and the talent that we place are extremely high level,
Mm-hmm.
and at that point, you assume that they understand and have been through this process before, and
Mm-hmm.
they're adults, right? You just assume everybody's an adult.
Mm-hmm.
They'll show up on time.
Right.
They'll respond to emails in a timely manner,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll walk in the door prepared for an engaging conversation.
But right, and that's in your current role. You're not giving out those kind of tips, which makes sense. But I guess I'm saying if somebody was asking for those tips, what would you say?
If somebody's asking for those tips, I'm not saying senior level people are excluded from that advice, because there are plenty of times when senior level people walk in and blow it.
Right.
Um, Not naming any names. I'm just saying, like, we all get inside of our own heads and get caught up in what we're doing for our career and our day to day job. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you show up in an interview and you haven't been in that situation in a long time, and that can be, it can be a little rusty. It can be like not riding a motorcycle after like an entire winter. Um, I would give people the advice of, first of all, do your homework, figure out if this startup, where they are in their funding. You know, are they in a crowded space? What's their competition look like?
Mm-hmm.
Where are those pain points likely to be? Um, how do you relieve those pain points? Who are you meeting with? Where are
Mm-hmm.
they from? What are they into? Basic, if you could spend 20 to 30 minutes
Mm-hmm.
just researching the company that you're going to meet with and the people that you're going to meet with,
Mm-hmm.
and come up with a few questions, maybe very similar to before you had launched a podcast with somebody new. That goes a long way. If you can walk in and come prepared with questions, you just
Mm-hmm.
don't want to sit there like a lame duck, and if you don't say anything and you just try to do damage control and field questions,
Mm-hmm.
you don't really have any control
Mm-hmm.
over how the conversation is going. And not that the goal of the conversation is to, you know, be a control freak and manipulate the outcome. The idea is to be engaging and have an interesting conversation and be humble,
Mm-hmm.
and also ask pointed questions. And the more information and questions that you can get in an interview
Mm-hmm.
at the very beginning, or a business meeting for that matter, the the better equipped you're going to be to start to answer their questions better,
Mm-hmm.
right?
So it
um
sounds like it's not necessarily like there's some magic trick. There's no quick fixes. It's really work.
oh
It's some
there's
homework. It's some checking people out. It's some being
yeah
a reasonable person.
it's yeah it's being self-aware, like, don't talk too much. Like, at some point you just got to shut up, because people, just like I said earlier in my conversation, like, people like to talk about themselves,
Right.
and sometimes that can hinder you as a
Mm.
candidate that's interviewing.
Mm.
So make sure that level of space is even
Mm-hmm.
in between you. Ask a lot of questions up front if you can get away with it. Figure out, all of a sudden you'll find yourself 15, 20 minutes into a conversation really having a clear picture of what they're trying, what this startup or what this design company is trying to do, who
Mm-hmm.
they need, and why. And then you can really pick and pull. It's like showing up to the table with a gigantic portfolio and you don't know what to show. And if
Mm-hmm.
you can just ask a few questions up front, you know exactly what to go
You
to
can filter
immediately.
it down real quick, yeah. And then I
Yeah,
guess you're just saying you think of your experience and who you are, like a portfolio, and what are you going to
exact.
show
Yeah,
from that portfolio, and kind
totally.
of tailor that output.
And then also, I think it's really important to make a connection with who you're talking with,
Mm-hmm.
because such a huge part of an interview and getting a job is to feel like you could be stuck in an airport with this individual for 24 hours,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, that's like the ultimate barometer of a good candidate or a good employee. Like, could I be stuck at an airport with this person?
Mm-hmm.
And if they can make a few key connections, like, oh, it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting, you're into making homemade ice cream, so am I, or, oh, you know you saw the latest whatever movie, like,
Mm-hmm.
that was awesome, I've seen everyone in that series.
Mm-hmm.
um Being a real person and
Mm-hmm.
not a robot at the end of an interview
Mm-hmm.
um is great. And then also, always, I feel like I'm lecturing in class here, but
No, no, that's the thing.
always
Is this will be a good resource for folks.
always send up a follow-up, like, send a thank you card. Written cards actually go a long way. At
Mm-hmm.
least, at a very minimum, send an email and just
Mm-hmm.
say, hey, thanks for your time.
Mm-hmm.
you know Acknowledge that everybody's time is valuable.
Mm-hmm.
You appreciate their time. um and that's about it. That's all you can do. And if there's anything that goes haywire on the back end,
Mm-hmm.
it's not your fault.
Well, that's
you know
super
you,
crazy to hear that a handwritten card, could go a long way. That sounds, I don't know if the term would be arts and crafty in this day and age. Just seems so interesting.
I want to revise that statement. If you are like a senior director level person, that might be strange. If
Okay,
you are like
more junior.
a designer or mid-level person meeting with
Okay,
like a
okay.
design
If I
shop or
get maybe
or a
maybe a good way
studio,
to
that
put it is
that
if you
that,
work
that,
with paper,
that might be
it's an
fitting.
appropriate medium.
Correct. Yeah, but like,
Okay.
at least send an email. Send an email. Send a thank you follow
Mm,
up. Like, hey, what's up?
mm,
I remember I used to get all kinds of thank you cards, but giving that advice out to somebody might sound kind of like a dinosaur, and I don't think I am. we've been working on a lot of junior and mid-level like design roles lately, and
Mm-hmm.
um,
I see
candidates
some
have been like,
cards floating
I'm gonna send this guy a card, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, great, do it.
Yeah.
But like if I put you, Kirk, on an interview, and you're like, I'm gonna write this guy a card and wrap it up in a shoebox, I'd be like, don't, might want to hold off on that.
Yeah, I'm gonna send him a weird gift or
Yeah.
something. That's
So
funny.
I don't know if that advice was helpful at all.
Absolutely. Um, I mean, anything in life, it's always about what you say and what you don't say, right? So, like I said, it's not a quick fix kind of thing. It's a just be real kind of thing, and that's
Authenticity.
authenticity. Yeah, I guess that's gonna show through. Somebody's
And I
gonna
think that's
bang you around a little bit, and they just kind of want to see like, are you a real person? Are you doing your thing? Versus them just having a robotic conversation with you.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Authenticity is really important. And I would say it's equally as important as intention.
Mm-hmm.
Just like if you meet a new person in public, like what's your intention?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like if your intention is like this person seems really interesting, I want to get to know them, that's going to come out no matter what you say. You could
Mm-hmm.
you could say the most odd thing ever, but if it's intention based and it's good, like they'll probably read through it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're interviewing, same thing. If your intentions are good and you're asking honest questions about a company's challenges and what it's like to work there and work life balance,
Mm-hmm.
it'll come across good. If your intentions are how much money can I get, what are the benefits package, what's the benefits package here, what's the equity,
Mm-hmm.
what's the vesting schedule, how's this going to benefit
Yeah.
me in 3 years, that's probably going to come out immediately too.
Yeah. It's interesting because those questions are questions that are meaningful, but you can't ask them. Those are questions that you kind of have to wait until there is an offer on the table and it's the negotiation stage.
Or close to the negotiation stage. I think
Mm-hmm.
once you've established a mutual agreement that we both like each other and I think we both work well together,
Mm-hmm.
it's cool for you to sneak questions like that in. Not like
Mm-hmm.
you're manipulating the situation, but just like, hey, what kind of stock options do you give employees? Oh, it's awesome. You know,
Mm-hmm.
me and my wife are thinking about having kids. What's the maternity situation look like? Dude,
Mm-hmm.
that's great. That's so sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if the main question from the get go is like, what's your budget for this role?
Mm.
And what's your salary ceiling? Can you even afford me?
That seems like such a bad question to say. It's
That's
like, what's your budget
that's
for me? Like, now you're like,
well,
let me
well
dive into your books.
right. First of all, you shouldn't even be there in the first place having that conversation
Mm-hmm.
if some of that hasn't been already worked on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
Like there should be a mutual understanding that's already happened. That's like, hey, you know, this is Joe. He's in this salary bracket.
Mm-hmm.
That's oh cool. It's totally in budget. Like we would love to talk to him
Right.
regardless.
Right. Yeah, just like, the same way somebody doesn't accidentally show up to a Lamborghini dealership looking for a, Camry.
Yeah, like I would. My budget is 250 a month, and I'd love to lease this. Like, what can you work with me?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So with, I just had it. I was thinking about that. You know what? I lost it. It was recruiting related. It was about the offers.
um, yeah. If you have any questions about like job offers or contract negotiations or any of that stuff,
Mm-hmm. Oh,
um,
I remember what it was. It was a question about like internal recruiters. So you've been an external recruiter with a company. You've also been an internal recruiter. One of the things that's so confusing to me about the internal recruiter is kind of it feels like they have mixed incentives, right? Because they have to kind of be on the candidate side, but they also have to be on the business side. What, in your experience, has been kind of how internal recruiting works? Because there's a certain amount of showing a candidate what they should and shouldn't do in the interview, right? Because they want things to go well, but they don't want to give away secrets of the company or those kind of things. You kind of get what I mean? Like, it's not
yeah,
from the
yeah,
external. It's I feel like the incentives are aligned pretty well because it's just I want you to get this job, you want to get this job, boom. It's, single line, but on the internal it seems a little bit mixed.
It is and it isn't. Internal talent teams or internal recruiters
Mhm.
have a really hard job, I would argue, since I've been on both sides of it. When you're an internal recruiter, you have a few things going for you, depending on where you work.
Mhm.
If you work for an established brand, like let's say you are head of talent or a senior recruiter at Airbnb or SpaceX or a memorable industry name,
Mhm.
you're going to reach out to somebody and they're likely going to get back to you. So that's great. You've already got past that hurdle. You have a recognizable brand name and people will respond to you.
Mhm.
And on top of that, you probably have a legitimate bucket of applicants that are continually applying and expressing interest that you can sort of sift through and pull through.
Mhm.
Regardless, though, you probably don't have a lot of time to do that because you do so much more than just recruit.
Mhm.
You are participating in the candidate interview experience. You
Mhm.
could be booking hotel rooms, you could be booking flights, you could be putting together care packages for people that are waiting in their hotel rooms when they arrive
Mhm.
from their flights. You
Mhm.
could be coordinating travel for their partner, wife, or spouse. They're going to be showing up in that city for the first time to even see if it's a place that they could live at. You're going to be curating restaurants and school districts
Mhm.
and setting up neighborhood tours, to make sure that this candidate is having a good experience and well informed and before they leave. You're also tracking down hiring managers. You're
Mhm.
trying to collect feedback. You're also trying to record all of the steps and all of that feedback into a candidate ATS system, which is, I don't know what the A stands for, but it's a tracking system.
Mhm.
Um,
Applicant?
yep, that would be it. That makes that would make sense. And anyway, so you're doing all this.
Mhm.
You're managing your internal clients are the hiring managers. You're
Mhm.
keeping them happy with new faces in front of them
Mhm.
and talent that matches the brief. You're making sure that the talent is having a good experience, that you're
Mhm.
always responding to them in a timely manner,
Mhm.
that you're getting them quick feedback, that you're not leaving them hanging. Um, you're also making sure that they are starting a new job on the right foot, that they feel
Mhm.
like they're being compensated accordingly.
Mhm.
You also are making sure that your bottom line is looking out for, you're keeping people within salary brackets so the
Mhm.
company stays profitable and you're
Mhm.
not paying people too much. Um, and yeah, and then you're constantly out at different networking events,
Mhm.
trying to put the name out, trying to
Mhm.
be a face, trying to be a brand ambassador of the tech company or startup or whatever, wherever it is that you work.
Mhm.
So being an internal recruiter is tough because your time immediately gets filled up during the day doing a lot of that people management and admin work.
Mhm.
And then you have less time to actually put on your headphones and really dig in
Mhm.
to relevant corners of the internet
Mhm.
where new candidates and fresh developers, new faces are hanging out and doing cool stuff
Mhm.
and really targeting those people to find them. So that's why a lot of internal agencies or internal talent teams
Mhm.
have external like partners. So
Oh, okay, that makes sense. So it's
right,
almost like you're saying we are the combination is almost like we're doing the kind of preparatory recruiting with in the house, but we also need somebody who's hunting folks down in places we don't expect.
in places we don't expect, in places we just can't be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So on the
Does
flip,
the oh sorry go ahead.
oh no, you go ahead.
Does the supply like doing external being an external partner? Are you guys external partner to companies?
Absolutely, I would consider that we are external partners to all of our clients.
Mm-hmm.
It really depends on what the level of the relationship is, but what's great about our job is, we don't have to book travel and track down a bunch of hiring managers for feedback or do a lot of that administrative work that you have to do for any company, Apple, Google,
Mm-hmm.
everything. We Our job is to keep an ear to the ground,
Mm-hmm.
to find the best people out there,
Mm-hmm.
to build relationships, to be the first to know who's proactively looking,
Mm-hmm.
and to keep our partners updated on who that is
Mm-hmm.
and when they are looking. So the ideal partnership is not a contingency based recruiting model where we
Mm-hmm.
just somebody yells at us and says like we need to get somebody right in here now.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like, hey guys, these are the people that we always hire and this.
Mm-hmm.
So we're giving you a green light to tip us off um, to people that you find or
Mm-hmm.
come across that fit this bill. And if you do, we want to see them,
Mm.
and
So it's like a continuous recruiting model.
right. So it's a continuous recruiting model. It's not scattered and disorganized. It's
Mm-hmm.
more of a trust that we won't send you somebody that's not great,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll always ask you if you need this person. So
Now,
there's sometimes we ask people if like, hey, do you need somebody like this? We found them, they're awesome. You should know about them. And they're like, wait, nope, we're good.
mm-hmm.
We don't need anybody like this. And but 9 out of 10 times they're like, yeah, who is it? Let's see them. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
thank you for letting us know.
Mm-hmm. So without giving away any secret sauce, how do you find the best people?
It's a variety of ways. It's first of all, we have a large network from just being in the industry a long time and getting
Mm-hmm.
older.
So CRM
Um,
software comes in pretty handy there.
it does. There are some out of the box solutions that
Mm-hmm.
any talent team can purchase and subscribe to that I think are great.
Mm-hmm.
We built our own,
If
and,
I was going to
and my
go
partner Strauss.
shopping, what would be the best one? I just started a recruiting company yesterday. What's the software you recommend?
Oh gosh, there's so many out there.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if you really want, it's kind of a crowded space, and nobody has it perfect. But
Mm-hmm.
there's like Workday, and there's Greenhouse, and
Mm-hmm.
there's Lever,
Mm-hmm.
and there's Bullhorn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a few more, but
Okay. Yeah, no, that's
Workable,
good to just get some names.
yeah, Workable is another one.
Mm-hmm.
But in my experience, Greenhouse is a great out of the box solution that I think
Mm-hmm.
is reasonably priced and um, customizable and probably perfectly fine for anything that you would need to keep track of that process and people in general. And
Mm-hmm. But you were
so
saying
yeah,
that Supply
Austin,
built their own. You guys did a
yeah, we
custom
built our
thing.
own.
Mm-hmm.
We built a custom database for ourselves. It doesn't have a complete like full blown
Yeah, polished
tracking
UI and yeah.
polished. It's got a pretty polished UI. We have some
Oh,
good designers on it, but
nice.
yeah, I can might as well put it anyway. It's called Rolodex, ROLDX, and we use that to
Okay.
keep track of all of our clients and all of our candidates, and we can sort by, um, cities, and we can rate candidates. If this is like a really hot design candidate, we can rate
Mm-hmm.
them as like a hot designer. We can, if you want to move to a different city, if you're like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, Seattle would be a great place to go, I can hashtag, Seattle that
Mm-hmm.
this person would move to, and I can queue that up immediately. So it's a great little tool that we built for ourselves, and
Mm-hmm.
it kind of works how our brains work. And
Mm-hmm.
Shaz was really the one that spearheaded that
Mm-hmm.
and got that off the ground. So,
Nice.
um, yeah, we're super lucky to have something like that. I think I dodged the main question though.
Did you?
Eh, what was the question before we got into ATS systems or CMS?
Uh, it's basically about how you find top talent. You
Oh,
said you
right.
have a
How we
database.
So yeah, so we have a database
Mm-hmm.
that I don't know, probably has roughly like 12,000 people in there
Mm-hmm.
of all different skills
Mm-hmm.
and different job titles. And then we probably use LinkedIn last.
Mm.
I'd
Really?
say that's the last stop. Yeah.
That
We
seems
just
super interesting because
we
they
just
have that whole recruiter system on the back end. You
they
can
do,
get the recruiter level.
and it's a great system and it's really powerful. And
Mm-hmm.
they're Boolean searches and their job organizational folders and notifications and all of those features are extremely robust and they're very smart.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you can really get them to work for you
Mm-hmm.
if you do some homework and really figure out how to automate that.
Hmm. But you're saying
And
it's
we
last though. Why would it be last?
it's sort of like always running is what I'm saying. Like
Oh, okay.
I have certain searches
Mm-hmm.
that notify me if somebody has changed something. So
Mm.
if I go on in the morning, I'll have notifications set up that say like, "Hey, so and so, this
Mm.
many new software developers moved to Los Angeles that changed their title to React
Mm.
or whatever it might be," and I'm like, "Oh,
Mm.
cool! I actually didn't know these three people. I'm gonna track down their email
Mm.
some other way, and then I'm gonna reach out to them." Or
Interesting.
if I can't find their email, I'll send them a LinkedIn note, which is like the last line of defense. That's like crap. I gotta send them a LinkedIn message.
Um, I do have one other question for you, but first I'll inject one more ad, which
Yeah.
is we actually you can get it at well, first I'll tell you what it is. Basically, on our phones, we were with Verizon, and we were able to switch off Verizon and save like I don't know 70% a month or something. It's ridiculous savings, and actually our coverage got a little bit better for where we're at. And with YouTube, we can do the save videos offline. With YouTube Kids for our little daughter, we can have those videos save offline. So since we're not doing heavy video and stuff, we were able to go lightweight on data. But the bottom line is, as far as data goes, it's unlimited data. Now, it's not fast data, right? It's not the LTE except for what you pay for. But you can always you can start with one plan or another plan. Uh, and then you can always add as much data as you want. But at the end of the day, you'll always have unlimited slow data. Uh, anyway, so we were able to cut our bill down to $15 per person per month for our cell phone service, and that's with like the latest iPhones. And that company is called Mint Mobile, and so you can go to kirk.live/mint mobile, all is one word. Uh, it's insane. Like I can't believe it's real uh, to be able to save that much in our bill. So we were paying like 120, now we're paying 30. Tell me how that works. I don't get it. Anyway, so
That's crazy. Yeah, my bill is like 82 a month.
look them up. Use the code so we get. I think we give people some discount. I can't quite recall, but it's pretty great, and it also lets them know that we sent you. uh,
Awesome.
so the question that I had for you was around when you. It seems like in this day and age, there's people are a bit more sensitive, just in general. Like there's a lot of things you can and can't say. There's a lot of things you can and can't do. How has, if you agree, how has that increased like personal sensitivity affected what you do over like the last 5 years?
Um, that's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I've always been fairly self-aware
Mm-hmm.
of what I'm writing or typing or saying
Mm-hmm.
in a business context or uh, in a social situation. I'm no exception. I'm sure I've blurted out things that meant to be a joke that might have been not the right time
Mm-hmm.
or place, but I mean, nothing I can recall that was like totally like a game changer.
Right.
That's still like following me around, but
It just seems like that
I
in the past, like conversation used to be uh like there it was a lot more forgiving. I guess I'll put it that way. Right? Like you could kind of step to the left, step to the right, and it wasn't a big deal. And it was actually a good way to kind of feel out a person and get to know them better. And it was kind of like your ability to be elastic and flexible and all that was kind of an indicator uh, about kind of how you approach things, adaptable. But now it seems like there's maybe just a bit more sensitivity, and it's almost like you can't really step out of line either side. It's kind of like things have to be pretty straight line. And now it's almost like um, that we are judged a bit more on how close we can stay to the line instead of judged a bit more on what the intent was.
that's a really good point. Um, yeah, I mean, I know earlier I talked about intent, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes no matter how good your intent is, um, you might cross a threshold or a line
Mm-hmm.
with some people when you don't intend to at all.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's somebody being overly sensitive or not, that doesn't really matter. That's not the point.
Mm-hmm.
The point is, how you feel, how
Mm-hmm.
that other person feels, regardless of if you think it's warranted or not.
Mm-hmm.
If you cross the line and you made somebody upset, um, that's important. And I think that there should be an empathy and a kindness
Mm-hmm.
around those conversations, whether they're um, political conversations, whether they're other sensitive things that are happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
But what I don't want to see, or what I don't want to happen, is find everyone on their heels in
Mm-hmm.
this tense apologetic state. Does that make sense? Like
Mm-hmm.
too scared to say what they really think.
Mm-hmm.
Just engaging in conversation, I guess, from a fear based platform.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but
Yeah.
I
How do
don't.
you think people? How do you think people avoid that? Like, can
I
we
think
agree? Can we agree that there is such a thing as oversensitivity, or is
absolutely,
that not
yeah,
okay? Okay. So
absolutely. And
if
that's
somebody
not.
is being oversensitive, how would you approach that? Do you approach it? Do you how what kind of a conversation would that look like? Because it seems like telling someone, for example, to have thicker skin, it's just like not allowed these days.
I think acknowledging that your feelings are important and that you can understand how they could feel that way
Mm-hmm.
is probably a good start.
Yeah, validation is huge. Absolutely.
Yeah, the validation is huge. I also think that there's a intelligent and kind way that you could politely disagree
Mm-hmm.
with them, or
Mm-hmm.
say like, I totally believe it. I totally completely believe the opposite of what you just said,
Mm-hmm.
and I still
And that's okay.
and I still respect you as a person, and I totally
Right.
still want to be your friend. But like
Right.
that what you said was totally like off the wall, or
Mm-hmm.
I think is totally off the wall. And
Mm-hmm.
here's why.
Right.
Um, you don't. I don't think you want to make a bunch of declarative statements
Yeah.
as to why somebody, or you think somebody is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. Is that
No,
what
I
is,
guess I guess it's
is that a
just an
good answer?
interest for me. It's something I've always been curious about how just how people dynamic change, um, how something that's on limits today could be off limits tomorrow, and just it's very organic and it moves at the speed of people, and there's more and more people every day. So it's a very interesting topic um, to explore. It's just how we're changing every day, how conversation changes. I guess I ask you about conversation just simply because you have conversations for a living. So,
Right. Honestly, like I think there's an inherent room with any conversation you're having with
mm-hmm,
anybody to slip up. And when I slip up, I don't mean like swear at somebody
mm-hmm,
or you know, say something awful
mm-hmm,
or offensive, but a room like a margin of error where you
mm-hmm,
can be unique and you can be yourself, and hopefully who you're talking with can is understands that like it's okay to disagree
mm-hmm,
and what I'm getting right now, who I'm talking to right now, this is an extremely small piece of the puzzle, and
mm-hmm,
I've had some intense conversations with family members and friends
mm-hmm,
that have been fairly upsetting. But I'm more of a I've always I like to listen when
mm-hmm,
people do get upset or excited. I like to listen to that,
mm-hmm,
and I try to take everything with a grain of salt. And I don't have to agree with it,
mm-hmm,
but I also don't have to attack somebody else or get angry.
mm-hmm,
And I think one of my friends said something funny recently. He's a good friend from Portland,
mm-hmm,
and he he said there's this everybody gives this relationship advice that says don't go to bed angry.
mm-hmm.
And he said, I think it's like actually the opposite of that. He's like, I think it's great to go to bed angry. He's like, because then like you wake up the next morning and like you're both a little more like relaxed
Mm.
and level headed and chill, and you've had time to
Gotcha.
reset and maybe you can approach a conversation or an argument from a different perspective the next day.
Yeah.
But
No, I think that advice originally comes from the Bible. I think it's don't let the sun set on your anger, and it is interesting to think about it that way in the whole like you got to resolve it. But actually, I think it's hilarious to watch Dr. Phil. So I watch Dr. Phil sometimes. I still remember one guy was on there and that he was focusing on that aspect of it too, and he was saying that they had agreed as a couple to never go to bed angry. But then he said, we just keep getting too tired now. And so we fight so much that we're both so tired that we do have to go to bed. So I thought that was absolutely hilarious that, that maybe that first night they tried for it, they were up till 3 a.m. Next night, 2 a.m. Then they're just like, eh. But I think that that's an interesting point is wait
then it
for
was
the
9
next
p.m. on the
day
dot.
wait for the next day and
Yeah,
just say, hey, you
let's
know,
put a pin in this for now.
yeah,
Let's get some sleep.
yeah,
I love you.
yeah.
Let's talk about this in the morning. What you're feeling is legit.
Well, you
It's
probably
important.
can't
It's
even say
important.
I love you at that point. You probably can't be reasonable at that point.
Yeah, this is maybe an idealistic situation. I don't know.
Hmm. I mean, grudges can last a while, so that's a tricky aspect of it. But I think there's some validity to definitely saying that rest is going to calm your nerves on all that stuff. I think the whole point is to not let it settle though in a way where it's making tracks. You know what I mean? It's more like if you can take care of it that day, there's going to be nothing permanent, nothing you're carrying on. And I think
Right.
that's kind of the whole point. So it's an interesting discussion though, like
No,
how to approach like
no, it is
anger
for
and
sure.
timing and
And you don't want to let things sit and like
yeah,
mold, you know.
yeah. I
So
mean, it goes into the whole conversation we were even having earlier, where um, I think the biggest key word in all of it is just balance. Which I
yeah,
hate that word in a way, just because balance is never like one way or the other. You can't measure it. It's not objective. It's just always changing. I mean, you think about those robotics, right? Those robotics labs, all that they do, they're getting the analog signal all the time too. Tilt this way, tilt that way, like, and they're, like those dogs that can run around from Boston Dynamics and things like that. Like, they have so many balance sensors that are just continuously giving feedback, and they're making all these micro movements. And the thing is just all about balance. um, which means everything's in a state of movement. Which actually, I'd like to hear more about that kind of stuff because it sounds like you know some space facts. Is that right?
I'm not sure how many space facts that I would impart on a real like astronaut, but
Mm-hmm.
I think that space is fascinating.
Yeah.
Um,
What have you learned? Do you believe in aliens? That's where you got to start. You have to start with do you believe in aliens? So first
I,
you
I
first you got to start by saying what an alien is because everybody goes straight to little green men.
sure it's. And I would think that an alien is an intelligent life form
Mm-hmm.
that is alive in some sense of the word.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not in a in a biological sense as we understand it
Mm-hmm.
as humans, but I mean, I think it's some form of life.
Mm-hmm.
Alien life could be microbes, you know, but I mean,
That doesn't sound intelligent.
that's not intelligent. So maybe I'm backtracking, but it would
Does it
be
have to be able to do math?
it would be alien. It would be foreign. But I absolutely believe in aliens. I absolutely
Ah, there it is.
do.
How many
Math.
times have you been abducted?
That no, I,
I'm just playing, just playing.
I don't know. Could be multiple times. I mean, I would assume that they're pretty good at
Covering the
erasing their
tracks. Yeah. No, but
covering their
you brought some
tracks.
space facts. What do you learn about space? What do you like about space?
I'm really fascinated about just essentially, I mean, mathematically, how many planets there are
Mm-hmm.
inhabitable zones of neighboring star systems that are just observable for to us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think if you actually break it down with different galaxies and stars, like mathematically, there has to be other Earth-like planets. There doesn't have to be. There are other Earth-like planets that have been like identified
Mm-hmm.
in the Kepler's essentially space telescope
Mm-hmm.
was designed to stare at a certain portion of the sky for I want to say it's like months or a year at a time,
Mm-hmm.
and it would observe every star in its field of view
Mm-hmm.
for like a extended amount of time, unshaken, unmoved, just
Mm-hmm.
fixed on
Mm-hmm.
one part of the sky, and it detects essentially small changes in the brightness
Mm-hmm.
of all those stars, and that is essentially a planet
Mm-hmm.
orbiting around that star or in transit.
Right, right.
And it
Yeah, they
called,
can get those
yeah,
movement patterns when they
right.
track it for enough
And
time.
so when you analyze that over a long period of time, like 6 months to a year,
Mm-hmm.
you can start to notice certain patterns. Um,
And that's how they found black holes and things like that.
I
Because
don't
they
think
can
that's
look
how.
for the movement, an elliptical movement around something that they don't see. You ever
Right,
seen
stars.
that part? Yeah.
I don't know if they use that particular technique to find black holes, but
Oh,
I
okay.
know that they've used that technique to discover thousands of new exoplanets,
Mm.
and I just think that's fascinating.
Now, I don't know
And then,
too much about it, but it seems like from what I saw in Cosmos, it seemed like spectroscopy was a big part of how they do that. That they can actually see what is on a planet based on spectroscopy. You know about that?
yes, and that is a technique that is going to be available soon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in our solar system, they can use that to
Mm-hmm.
figure out what an atmosphere is made of by essentially how light bends and
Mm-hmm.
reflects, excuse me, out through an atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And they are in the process of building and launching. It's called the James Webb
Mm.
Space Telescope,
Mm-hmm.
and that's been a long time in the making, and that'll sit uh, essentially 1 million miles outside of Earth's orbit,
Mm-hmm.
and that will be the largest telescope that and most powerful telescope that we've ever been able to use,
Hmm.
and that will be directed at essentially it'll replace the Hubble is what they're saying. It'll do the Hubble
Hmm.
Space Telescope, which everybody's heard of, but that will, if I'm not mistaken, have what'd you call it?
Spectroscopy.
Spectroscopy, which
Hmm.
now it will be able to, once that is operational, it'll be able to hone in on a lot of prime planet suspects that
Hmm.
the Kepler telescope identified as potential habitable planets, and
Hmm.
then that will allow scientists to figure out, like, does this atmosphere have carbon in it?
Hmm.
Are there biological plants? What's the atmosphere made of? Does it have an ecosystem?
Hmm.
What's the atmosphere composed of, and why? And so that'll be a pretty powerful tool.
Hmm.
And I
No
think that's
question.
pretty fascinating because you can figure out, like, let's point this at Earth. Oh yeah, it's got a ton of CO2 in the atmosphere.
Right.
you know, yeah, it must have life. Must have plants that are releasing
Carbon dioxide.
carbon dioxide.
Right.
So I think that'll be fascinating.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think advanced like jet propulsion science is pretty fascinating. Like, how are we gonna spread out? How are we gonna inhabit other planets?
Hmm.
What are the closest star systems to our solar
Hmm.
system? Um,
Yeah.
how old? How, yeah.
One of the interesting terms that I ran across. I read uh, one of Elon Musk's top picks. I kind of looked at what books he recommends and kind of wanted to work my way through that list a little bit.
Right.
Uh, and It was an artificial intelligence book. I think it's Super Intelligence and How We Get There or something along those lines. And I always liked what it talked about in it, which is that we have well, it talks about basically if you have AI and you trigger it and it starts, globbing up resources, it's going to start moving on to other planets, like you're talking about. Like it'll move, how do we move from planet to planet and what that looks like.
Right.
Anyway, the whole point was uh, he kind of started the conversation by saying, not so much, here's your bank account, not so much here's the landmass that we have, but he called it what is our cosmic endowment, and he articulated that as basically um, what if this AI was just on a mission. He likened it to creating paper clips, right? Because technically, if you gave AI a super AI the goal of creating paper clips, say 100 paper clips, it might create 100 paper clips, and then you know something about its logic would say, oh, but I need to be sure that I have 100, so just in case I'm going to create one more, you know, and that's a rounding error, right? And so that his point was that rounding error would go on and on for infinity. So in other words, this AI would start creating so many paper clips that it turns all nations on the planet into paperclip makers. It starts doing rocket research and then sends rockets to other planets and starts making paper clips on those planets and sending more rockets. And his whole point about the cosmic endowment was the amount of resources we have is everything that we could reach out to by via spaceship in our whole universe. And I always thought that was a very interesting picture to be like, okay, what's our cosmic endowment? What do we have access to, assuming we could go to other planets?
That's really crazy.
Hmm. Yeah,
That's
it
really
was.
interesting.
Well, it was very scary because that's the whole point of the AI stuff is if you don't give it a good final objective, then and
And it's just you
if
leave
it's
it
super
to
smart, like it's
leave it up
going
to
to
rounding errors.
yeah, and there's going to be that's why in that book it talked a bit about that the final goal should be something that's kind of living and breathing. Um, his suggestion was something about whatever all people agree, our shared 50% of everything that we agree on, you know, that should be the final goal, right?
Right.
Like we all want to be healthy, you know.
Right.
If there's outliers that want to cut their limbs off, like they don't count. Like let's just assume everybody wants to be healthy, and then so that's a great aspect of the final goal.
That's interesting. I need to read that book.
Hmm. Oh, it's super fun because he goes through all the math, and then he goes through the uh, the
I'm
actual just implications of it.
That's scary.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I am reading the new, what's it called? Brief- Oh, it's Stephen Hawking's new book. It's
Hmm.
called Brief Answers to the Big Questions.
Oh, right, right.
And that's another interesting one as
Hmm.
well. If you are just kind of a space nerd and you're
Hmm.
also a futurist and you're curious about like space time or black holes or other big scientific like questions like that,
Hmm.
it's kind of a neat book. Just like aggregated, choose your own adventure. Like, do you want to read about like relativity and what's on the other side of the black hole?
Hmm.
Do you believe there's a God?
Hmm.
With the universe so huge and so vast,
Hmm.
do you believe there's something that controls that? Well, why not? Why do you defend that?
Right.
It's pretty fascinating.
Hmm. Okay. What that was Stephen Hawking's book. What was it called again?
Brief answers to the big questions. I think
Okay.
it's right. It's right
Something
behind
along
me.
those lines.
Yeah. Um,
Maybe I can throw it in the comments.
yeah.
Um.
And another good book I've been reading lately is how to. This is like an old self-help book, but it's how to
Hmm.
stop worrying and start living. That was one of the. I read that a few months back.
Hmm.
It's by Dale Carnegie.
Hmm.
Um, it's
Recommend it.
it's it's a great book. Yeah, it was written like so long ago, but like it's just like basic formulas
Hmm.
for how to improve your happiness.
Yeah.
And here's how like historical figures implemented some of this advice,
Hmm.
and here's how some of these outcomes were drastically different because of it.
Hmm.
Um, it's pretty awesome.
I,
If you
I
haven't,
definitely need to check that out.
yeah,
I really love those books that are a little bit older that have stood the test of time, and keep reading them because so many people have recommended it over time.
pick it up. It's a great one.
So,
Um,
if you have just one more minute, could you talk about what your 5-year plan is? You mentioned that was something.
5 year plan. I know it's I know it's always kind of a moving mark, but I mean, to be honest with you, in 5 years, love to have. I'd like to be a homeowner.
Hmm.
That's one of my generic answers.
Sure.
I would love to live in either Boulder,
Hmm.
Colorado, or um, it's like such a moving target. Boulder would be ideal.
Hmm.
Portland would be amazing, but I have family out here, so maybe Boulder first.
Hmm.
I could also see myself living in Northern California, but kind of hard home there. I would love the supply to kind of have grown to be more than just a couple of us.
Hmm.
I'd love to have our hands in all cities and sort of like small offices in each city. I think that'd be amazing.
Hmm.
And kids, I think that would be, yeah, on a more personal note, that's part of the 5 year plan.
Hmm.
So, and also as far as diets are concerned with the 5 year plan, I think there's a lot of literature and research on a plant-based diet.
Hmm.
So
So you want to
I'm
move more toward vegan?
I don't know if I could ever give up my half and half, but yes,
You're
I
what?
think
Half and half?
half and half of my coffee. Yeah, you gotta have some animal products in your
Oh my
diet.
goodness.
I assume you could supplement that with
You
almond
can
milk.
move. You can move to black. You can move to black coffee.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think I could ever give up pizza, so I don't know if I could really be a vegan. But um, I
Pizza
could
is a
def
hard one.
I could definitely. give up most of the dairy
I went
and
off dairy a while back. It was a great
most of the
decision.
meat. Was it? You feel better? You have great skin?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, don't know about the skin, but been off dairy for years. It's just great, just great.
Wow.
Yeah. You and I'm the guy who at college I would like want a block of cheese and I just mow it down. Um, but no, no, no more dairy. Uh, I love cheese. I love the idea of cheese, but cutting it out of my diet, it was a thing, but it was maybe it wasn't difficult just because my body responded so well to
Mm,
taking that out. So it's maybe not for everyone, but
right.
I always recommend with almost everything in your diet, take a month or two off of that
Just
thing
just to see
and
how.
then reintroduce it. And because I had been beating up my body so much that it never really had a chance to speak back to me, right? I had been eating dairy, 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 dairy. But then when I went off dairy and I came back to it, my body was like, dude, no, like, no, get that out. So, and it was very interesting, like, looking at my body that way, doing that diet kind of switch up and things like that. It was, it gave me a lot of insight into how to have that kind of conversation with my body, how to be like, one of the things I always like to think about is that it's almost like you're a manager of a massive company of cells. And so, are you there listening to your cells? Are you, because I feel like there's a lot of
Are you a dictator?
well, yeah, there's a lot of health things that I feel like we're gonna find out at some point in time that it had a lot to do with the fact that it was a rebellion of your cells because they weren't being treated right.
Right.
So I like to practice a mental model of you know uh, being there for my cells, being an advocate for my cells, being empathetic for
I
my
love
cells.
that. I'm gonna have to take that metaphor with me next time I crush a pint of ice cream.
Nice,
But I am moving more plant based for sure.
nice.
I think a lot of it is, at least for me, is doing what you can, when you can,
Yeah,
and if you have the opportunity to choose, vegetarian based options or
right.
plant based options, when you're cooking for yourself or out eating or wherever you might find yourself, that's great.
Well, thanks so much for coming out tonight, Dave.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.